Do you remember the first time you were given a rifle? They told you to make you a blade of the Emperor. They wrapped your young hands in oath and iron, and you believed. You marched, you bled, you learned to look the other way when men screamed at night. You learned to count the bodies and called it a victory. You learned, always, to obey. Do you know what it's like to be trusted and spat upon in the same breath? To be handed the gun and told you were a monster. You were taught to love the shadow of a god whose flesh is long since rotted away. Your faith is a noose, tightening around your neck as you drop deeper into the abyss. You were taught obedience, and obedience has one great weakness: predictability. Predictable things are clean to expose of. You will go quietly, and your story will have a neat ending. They will pin a medal on your corpse and tell your children how brave you were. They will not think if you were afraid in your final moments. They will dare not to think of what you heard in the dark.
Hail to the Lord of the Night, motherfucker. It's time to talk about depressed Slavs like it's the fucking Soviet Union. The Night Lords, let's not kid ourselves, are bastards. They are awful, horrible people that were expected to do awful and horrible things and did them well. And were supervised by what I can only describe as schizo Batman. Fuck Konrad Curze. He got everything he deserved and still deserves more. If you are a true Night Lord fan, you are glad your Primarch is dead because he deserved it and it's what he wanted. How do you talk about the Night Lords? Almost everybody knows about them now. Thanks to the Night Lords Omnibus, and yes, we're going to be talking about First Claw in this video, they have become far more popular than ever before. I think Bricky is mostly to blame. The books aren't new, they're from the 2010s, and had more light brought onto them by our Lord and Savior, Aaron Dembski Bowden. Praise be his name. So it's time to talk about our boys in Midnight Clad, the Flayers in the Night, whose armor bears blood and lightning, the Night Lords of the 8th Legion. But who are the Night Lords? Where did they come from? And why do they deserve every bad thing that has ever happened to them? That and more after this message. We're closing in on 5k, and we might have even passed it by the time this video comes out because I am doing this late because life. So I just want to say thanks for hanging out. This channel wouldn't exist in the way that it is without you all. Without you, the viewer, a member of this warband, whether you consider it or not. With the rate this channel is growing, I'm gonna actually have to make a Discord. I have plans for that, don't worry. People have been asking me about it, especially in the streams. If you've been in the streams, you know I've been pestered about starting up a Discord as well. They said they were going to start up a fan Discord, and I think they were actually serious about it, but I hope they weren't. I also stream. Come paint with me. It's good in a stupid time. I usually try to stream around the evening after I upload a video, and sometimes I stream on Saturdays and Sundays. If I'm streaming on a weekday, it means something has gone terribly wrong. So, Konrad was fucked from the start. He shares a lot with Angron in a way where he had basically zero chance of having a semi-normal life. So the Primarchs got scattered by chaos, assumedly, and with their little incubation pods having crashed all over the galaxy, Konrad specifically not only ended up on Nostromo, which is a planet shrouded in darkness and is one of the worst hive world / mining planets of all time, his pod smashed into the planet so fucking hard that he almost ended up near the superheated liquid core of the goddamn planet. After climbing out of his pod, baby Konrad, someone correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I believe people immediately tried killing him, and when he climbed out of his pod, he killed them instead. And he ate them. Konrad never ended up getting adopted by a family, unlike most of the other Primarchs, and shit, dude, even Mortarion had a dad. Nostromo was a shithole of a planet. It was a mining world, like I said, with extremely high poverty and an extremely high crime rate. You probably noticed I said was. Well, we'll talk about that. Konrad, he was a very troubled person. So first off, he could see into the future, and you're probably expecting an Oracle of Delphi situation where he could see into the future and warn people, but nobody listened to him and everybody was doomed to die. No, it's actually way worse somehow. He only saw the bad future, regardless of the situation. He only ever saw the worst in literally everything, no matter how hard he tried. Fast forward a few years, and he's working on culling down the crime rate of the planet via vigilante justice, if you can call murdering and torturing criminals justice. Sure, some violent offenders you can argue the death penalty for, but not for literally everyone. Did you know someone tried to... there's really no other way to say this without it just sounding stupid. Someone tried to take their own life, and Konrad Curze blinded them. Not only blinded them, but tortured them and eventually killed them. Why? Because that kind of act is illegal. You want to know how bad the visions Konrad had were? One time he was chasing a teen criminal. I think it was a teenager. It might have been a young adult. I really don't remember. And as he got closer, he didn't have one, but he had two visions. This is weird because he only ever saw one vision where it was always the worst possible outcome. One was he took the boy in, he trained him, and the boy would go on to become an icon of justice and better the planet. They would actually end up reforming the planet in its entirety. It would end with Konrad being at the boy's deathbed as he got older, being with him during his last moments right before he passed in to look upon the great works they did for this world. Konrad would have had a son. He would have had somebody to share his life with, even if it was for a small fragment of how long he was going to exist. But still, he would have had somebody. The other was the boy would stab him. This wouldn't kill him, Konrad's a Primarch, but the boy would get away. Stories of someone surviving the Night Haunter would spread, and not only the fact that he survived him, but that he could bleed. He could be beaten. The people who once feared him would no longer be afraid. They would organize to fight him, and he would lose control over the people of Nostromo, and eventually the planet would become even worse than he originally found it. The boy stopped running and approached Konrad, to which Konrad determined it wasn't worth the risk, and he killed the boy, only to find that his knife was nowhere within reach of him. Konrad tried to not think about that. Konrad worked overtime killing criminals. Entire gangs were just disappearing and then reappearing, but, not in like jail cells or like strapped to the bat signal like how, Batman does it. No, instead they were flayed corpses hanging underneath bridges or blocking sewage drains. Jesus fucking Christ, Konrad. It should be stated, he only did really go after criminals, but also, like I said, he would torture, mutilate, and kill those who tried to take their own lives because Konrad is a piece of shit. Konrad did this shit for like a year. It's kind of crazy how the scale of the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy is, because it's honestly not that long. In a year, Konrad managed to make the main city of Nostromo Quintus, the crime rate 0. He then did a hostile takeover of Nostromo and became its king, forcing all the nobles to either kneel or die. A lot of them died. It got to a point where the legend of the Night Haunter was so fucking prevalent that it was told like a bedtime story to children to keep them in line. I should also mention, those horrible visions he had? Yeah, it turns out he saw them in his dreams as well, like every night. So this man's psyche is just constantly degrading from day one. Alright, because there were so few criminals when he was king, they were dragged into the throne room where he was at and tortured as it was publicly broadcasted on every channel on the planet in order to force compliance. It actually worked. The Legion of the Night Lords, when Big E shows up and is handed over to them, then became composed of criminals. My understanding is that since Marines die in combat, these criminals were to serve till death. I'm pretty sure that's literally a Space Marine litany or something. My favorite thing about Night Lords is that their drip literally didn't change, going from loyalist to traitor. They had skulls, limbs, flesh, and blood decorated to their armor, and nothing changed when they went to chaos, and it was just so fucking funny. My understanding is that the criminals, mostly the first recruits from Nostromo, were, how do I describe this? Honest criminals? They were reformed being a loose definition. After Konrad left Nostromo to join the Great Crusade, Nostromo fell back into its old gang culture, and recruits from the planet were far more corrupt as time went on. We fast forward, obviously Curze goes fucking traitor because, look at this guy. He tortures Vulcan, plays the most insane game of Among Us against Gilman the Lion and Sanguinius, and obviously he decides to help with the Dropside Massacre and other escapades involving destroying the Imperium. Eventually Gilman and the boys capture Curze and they put him on trial? Why would you? Okay. I'm pretty sure he kidnapped Gilliman's mom at some point. Then they jettison him into space in a stasis pod rather than killing him. So Konrad also saw his death when he first met Big E. In fact, when he met his brothers, he saw all of their deaths. If I remember correctly, he saw Rogaldorn being torn apart and all that was left behind with his hand. Never mind, I don't remember the rest of them. I think he saw Sanguinius' death or something. But when he looked at Big E, he not only did he see his death, he saw his own. He saw Big E sending an assassin after him that would one day take his life. And as time goes on, Konrad becomes more schizophrenic. He had a meat sculpture of the Emperor, by the way, just in his basement or something. He was degrading so fast due to his dwindling psyche and all the nightmares that kept torturing him that it was literally to a point where he was degrading faster than his own legion, and his legion started to fucking hate him. Oh yeah, Konrad at some point decided to exterminate Nostromo, My understanding is that he blamed the planet for the way that he was, and he thought destroying it would help his psyche. It in fact did not help his psyche. Eventually, after the Siege of Terra, Konrad retreated into isolation where he awaited the Imperial assassin Emshen to come and take his life. He did not fight. He didn't even wear his armor, I believe, and he let Emshen kill him. But why? Why would he do that? He could have easily killed an assassin, armor or not. He's a Primarch. It's not hard. Lorgar, who is, I would argue, one of the weakest Primarchs of all of them, was able to basically deadlift a Warhound Titan trying to stomp on him. So why would Konrad not fight back? This deals with a lot of what makes Konrad actually interesting, despite the fact that he's the biggest piece of shit ever. I like Perturabo and he's a cunt, but fuck, I'm glad Konrad is not my Primarch. Death is nothing compared to vindication, were his last words. For all his life, Konrad saw visions of the worst, and they came to pass almost every time. The only time it didn't was the teenage boy he killed, and that probably triggered a revelation that he couldn't deal with. He didn't have to adhere to the future that he saw. He could have changed his future. He probably could have been better. Konrad chose to be the monster. He was never forced to be one. That is why he would rather die to the assassin than lift a finger. If he died, he saw it as it meant the future was unavoidable. It was fate. It was predetermined, and he had no real choice in his life. That his actions would have been vindicated. Fuck Curze, but that is some good-ass writing. I wanted to blitz through Curze really quick because, let's be real, you guys are here for the Legion, you're not really here for the Primarch, and yeah, so am I. I fucking love the Night Lords. Not as much as the Iron Warriors, but my Nostroman exiles are more than welcome to hang around this warband. I have a lot of respect for the Night Lords. They're planetary control on a budget, and they learned from the best. As much as Konrad is a psychotic piece of shit, he was very good at his job. He was so good that, the Imperium kind of thought he was taking it a bit too far. But the Night Lords during the Great Crusade were literally terror tactic specialists. Someone is probably asking why am I not saying the simplified version of this word, and that's because I'm not trying to get this video flagged by the Patriot Act. Night Lords could bring unruly worlds into compliance with a single squad and probably a week's worth of time, as opposed to the World Eaters who have to wage an entire planetary bloody war that maximize civilian casualties and property damage. One of my favorite stories about how effective they were is that they recently suffered a defeat against some Imperial secessionists. I think they were secessionists, it's not really the point. Regardless, the enemy ended up celebrating and had a great parade to celebrate their victory against the 8th Legion. They even had their flagship fly overhead the main city. Then the bay doors opened, and something dropped out of it and hit the ground. Really hard. It was a flayed corpse. Then another dropped, and another, until it was literally raining men. It was raining the flayed corpses of possibly still alive members of the ship's crew. The Night Lords threatened that if the world was not brought to kneel, more would be skinned. And I believe they handed over the planetary governor's head on a pike within like a half hour. The Night Lords were truly the budget option, and as far as I know, they never really conquered worlds. They merely kept them in line, and it makes sense when you think about it. The Night Lords aren't just using terror tactics, they're showing humanity the ugly side of the Imperium should you choose to not comply. They learned from Konrad very well, skinning, publicly broadcasted torture, terrorizing higher-ups, or just, skinning them. Did I already say skinning them? The Night Lords really love skinning people. There's a dedicated skinning guy in the fucking kill team. I think he's called the Skin Thief. Fucking analog horror-ass name. Big E, hypocrite he was, said that Curze and the Legion, like I said earlier, took things too far. I forget who said it, but there's a quote comparing the Space Wolves to the Night Lords. It might have been Sevatar. It's something along the lines of, the wolves go for the throat, we go for the eyes, then the tongue, the hands, then the feet, and the skin from the crippled remains. Big E asked for terror tactics. He got terror tactics, and he acted surprised about it all. I do still want to believe Big E could see into the future and probably knew Konrad was going to turn traitor, or maybe that he had to treat him this way for humanity to survive. Spoilers for the Alpha Legion video, but Alpharius and or Omega and or both of them, no one really knows, were supposedly shown a future. Nobody really knows about the Imperium, and if Horus would have won, then all of humanity would eventually be wiped out and everything would be consumed by chaos. Whereas if Big E won, while he would be crippled, obviously in the current state and age we're in 40k, the Imperium would enter a large state of degradation and would possibly never recover, but humanity would survive. That being said, Big E is also just a dick. I mean, go look at the Last Church. The dude is a giant self-absorbed prick. I want to talk about their armory really quick because I think it's just super fun. These guys favor lightning claws and jetpacks if it wasn't obvious, giving the whole creature of the night taking flight sort of look. One thing that is kind of their shtick is chain glaives. Apparently, they're actually a Nostraman weapon, and because every legion takes homages to their planet, they kind of just stuck with them. Kind of funny how these guys who flay people choose possibly the most inefficient weapon for skinning people. Like, lightning claws are right there. They're so much better. They're basically lightsabers, and they could cut skin off very easily, but also chain glaives are just horrifying. If you really think about it, it's a pole arm with a giant chainsaw attached to the end of it, and it's fitted for the size of a space marine. The space marine doesn't even have to be within reach of you to actually tear you apart. It's actually just really fucked up. I want to talk about Sevatar. I really fucking like Sevatar. He was the first captain and Curze's right-hand man. Speaking of right hands, the Night Lords actually stuck to some of their gang traditions. Sevatar had a red gauntlet, the tradition being something called Stained Sinners Red. It was to mark a gang member for death after they paid their debt, either for being a fool or a traitor. Sevatar claimed that he was both. The Nostraman language is also kind of a character on its own. I'm not a linguist by any means, I only speak English, but it's like vulgar Russian French. Or Slavic French? I don't know. It sounds like very pretty, but once you translate it, it's not at all pretty. Like one phrase is Shrila la l'ril. Sounds pretty, right? It also sounds like Italian brain rot. It translates to whore who mates with dogs. I think my favorite one so far that I looked when I was trying to look up the Nostraman language, and if I'm getting this wrong, I'm sorry, but I think my favorite one is Silvasha Nure, which is he has no arms. I don't know why, it sounds very German to me. Also, if I'm getting this pronunciation wrong, it's a fake language and I'm not French and I'm not Slavic. But Sevatar was the best duelist of the Night Lords, and he was actually able to hold his own against a beast like Sigismund. And my favorite fucking thing about him is that he didn't fight fair. Fuck pride and fuck honor. If you want to fight to the death, it's to the death. He dueled Sigismund, I think for like hours on end or something, and they were just evenly matched the entire time. Also, they were dueling because like the Night Lords were like skidding people. This is a theme. This is just how they get down. So obviously Sigismund got a little bit pissed off, and so they started dueling, and Sevatar decided to fucking headbutt him in the middle of the duel, and he got disqualified. He still claimed that he won, and I fucking love that so much. Sevatar is very pragmatic, even for a piece of shit. The Night Lords feel very Iron Warriors to me, like I said, and I think that's kind of why I like them. Sevatar even told Sigismund that there is no honor in war, and at some point, Sevatar died? No one seems to remember when, only that apparently he did. The Atramentar, the special Terminator bodyguards of the First Company, who are probably the baddest motherfucker, not even probably, they are the baddest motherfuckers in the Legion, literally dissolved after Sevatar's death because nobody could live up to how much of a baller he was to lead them. There's theories that he's still alive after all, he kind of just vanished. People claim that he died, but it also just feels very Mandela effect. Like everybody assumes he died, so he clearly died, and that just becomes what everybody believes. Even Konrad believes that he's dead, but he was also kind of like loopy towards the end of his life, and he was confused as to where Sevatar was. So maybe he knows that he's still alive, maybe he doesn't, I don't fucking know. I'd like to think that Sevatar is still out there, and maybe one day he'll return in 40k and he'll get his own model, but I'm also not gonna hold my fucking breath. Lysander and Vulcan Heastan just got model refreshes, and Chaos Undivided still doesn't have any fucking characters that aren't Black Legion related. The Night Lords actually have 2 characters who could get models in 40k, and yet we're missing both of them, not only in 40k gameplay, but in the lore. This video is going to devolve into me talking about First Claw, huh? Alright, so this is your warning now. Everyone wants me to talk about First Claw and the main characters from the Omnibus. This section is going to contain spoilers, so this is your one and only warning. If you don't want to listen to it, go ahead and just, I don't know. Honestly, you probably just click off the video unless you want to go towards the end to listen to the quote. First Claw, commanded by Talos Valcorin, the Soul Hunter, an apothecary during the Great Crusade who survived into modern 40k. And his squad was Adhemar? Is that how you say it? I don't remember how you say most of these guys' names, I'm sorry. He was a former sergeant of the unit who got stomped on a Warhound Titan. He's really not that important. Malkarian, my boy, is an incredibly salty dreadnought who literally is the dreadnought meme of being an old man. Vandrid and Rothi, the Exalted, is basically the big man in charge who is possessed by a demon of Tzeentch and is a master of void warfare and the shipmaster of the Covenant of Blood. And he is a fucking baller. Mercutian is an aristocrat who got yoinked from his family and served First Claw by firing a heavy bolter with reckless abandon. Oh, and I actually hate these next 3, which is kind of funny. Syrian is a cunt and he literally exists to make everybody else suffer. Reuven. Fuck Reuven. I'm so glad about how his story ended. It's so funny. Uzas, the dumb fucking coordinate berserker who swears he isn't falling to chaos, guys. He swears he's not getting possessed. He swears he's not on the stuff. He's clean. He promises. Yeah, I don't like Uzas. I'll defend myself later. Variel the Flayer, a former Red Corsair apothecary that followed the group around and gave everybody the creeps. I'm also pretty sure he kidnapped a child. I'm not pretty sure. He kidnapped a child. Zarl, my fucking boy. Talos' best friend back on Nostromo and the best fighter in the company. He was the best of them. The goddamn fucking OG of OGs. He would have made Sevatar proud of his legion for even a fraction of a second. Oh, right, and there's a Zarzel. I'm gonna be real, I forgot that he was in the books, or even if he was in the books, I think, was he just mentioned offhanded? I really don't remember, but he was in First Claw. There's a sense about him somewhere. I genuinely don't remember him. I don't know why. Talos inherited a bit of Konrad's power, which made him mirror his Primarch a lot with how extreme he gets towards the end of the books. He's the main character of the books, and he's pretty interesting, and he's also insanely fucking troubled, just like his Primarch. He's definitely up there for me when it comes to Chaos Space Marine characters. I really love Malkarian. He's just so funny to me, and he doesn't mean to be funny, which is the probably best kind of funny. He's tired, old, and as far as I can recall, he didn't even want to be a Dreadnought to begin with. He just wanted to die, and they forced him in one. They literally tried to awaken him, and he fucking refused. The only reason he did was because there was a fight, and he just kicked off self-preservation mode, I guess. He literally wakes up and just says, "I heard bolter fire," and started to make a mess of everybody who wasn't on his side. Vandred is a character who I didn't have much interest in at first, but towards the end of his story, it was just the fucking best. So the Legion has degraded. Legionaries are falling to chaos left and right, and they're being made weaker to it. Vandred ended up getting possessed by a demon of Tzeentch, and pretty much is trapped in his own body the entire time, right up until the end. I believe from how Syrian describes it, what's going on with Vandred is a whole lot more fucked up than what's going on with him and his worship of Slaanesh. Vandred, at the end, locked the fuck in and did what he did best, and that was fight a void war. He willed himself back into control of his body, buying time for First Claw to evacuate and giving the Red Corsairs fucking Chaos Space Marine pirates a run for their money. The dude was pulling Ender's Game shit and reduced the fleet, attacking him to half strength, and he's literally the shipmaster from Halo. Outnumbered, it is an even fight. I think my most favorite part about him is not only that he is a Void War master, not only is that he is a fucking baller who went toe-to-toe with actual fucking space pirates in said Void War, but right at the last moments before his death, he relinquished control of his body just so the Tzeentch demon possessing him would suffer all the pain of the death rather than him. This dude is so petty, Perturabo thinks he's too bitter. Fucking love Vandred. Okay, it's time to talk about Uzas. Uzas frustrates me. Uzas was the best of the Legion. He was a noble and strong fighter, and he ended up falling to Khorne. There are good aspects to the Chaos God, as good as you can get, but Khorne is an honorable and honest god in the way, but he's still a bloodthirsty maniac. And Uzas fell right into his influence and started to degrade more and more. Then, he ended up killing a bunch of serfs on the ship. Or did he? Turns out the fucking cunt Syrian actually did all the killing, and he framed Uzas for it. It wasn't hard. Uzas was a brute and he wasn't too bright anymore, and I think the guy was so bloodthirsty that of course everybody would assume it was him. I think the part that makes me sad about Uzas the more is that there's moments where he's himself again. He becomes lucid, and at some point he sees his gauntlet is red, and that shit hurt. I feel like Uzas is an allegory for drug abuse in some way, because he could be better, but he just keeps on slipping. The Night Lords are not good people, not by any means. Uzas has a bloody stain on his chest piece from some noble's daughter for I don't know if there was non-consensual hugging in that one or not, but it doesn't make him any less of a piece of shit for also murdering them all. The last character I want to talk about from First Claw is Zarl. Zarl is Talos' best friend and arguably the reason why Talos lived for so long. Zarl was always there to keep him safe, bail him out on Nostromo and in the Legion. Zarl was always there to keep Talos together. And I think the part where Zarl realized that his friend wasn't the same man anymore is when they went to Nostromo one last time before Curze destroyed it. Talos' mom was... Alright, there's really no way to say this clearly. Talos' mom was a gang whore, I believe. Not willingly, she had a tattoo of her owner's name on her, and despite the fact that Curze controlled the planet, her life never got easier. She was still living in abject poverty and suffering under the rule of the gangs, even if they weren't actually doing, hard criminal activities. They were just pieces of shit. The Night Lords were having an honor parade or something, and some old woman tried to get Talos' attention. She got too close, and her beaties threw her on the ground and blew her fucking head off. Talos didn't even recognize his own mother, but Zarl did, and he reprimanded Talos for it. Not only that, but for also not doing anything. I think her last words before getting shot was going to Zarl, who she recognized first, and asked him, "Where is he? Where is my son?" Aaron Dembski Bowden really likes making you feel like shit when you read, and I'm kind of concerned for him at times, like, ADB, are you okay? Do you need a hug, man? We're here for you. There is one last character I want to talk about, the successor to the entirety of First Claw, Decimus, bearer of the gene seed of Talos, the child of a serf who, by the way, I will just go ahead and say Septimus was a fucking badass, and a navigator, prophet of the 8th Legion. He inherited Talos' gift of foresight, and not just that, he inherited an item from almost every member of First Claw, at least those who mattered. He bears Talos' sword, Alcarian's twin bolt gun, Uzaz's skin cloak, a helmet bearing Talos' rune, Zarl's winged crest, and Syrian's lightning bolt tears. After the 13th Black Crusade, he saw Abaddon defeating the Imperium in a vision, but at a great cost of many warband leaders, and he was right about many of them who ended up dying. He isn't in-game, obviously, but I love the motif that he kept something from everybody as a culmination of all their efforts. They didn't die for nothing. The title is the truth this time around, and it is flat out glazing. I do think that the Night Lords are the best Chaos faction. They are perfect in almost every single way. Degraded, a shadow of their former selves, and have been shattered and are so weak that they never take fights head on. Instead, they choose cowardice and fight a crippled enemy that would never have a chance of defeating them. Not even defeating them, just didn't have a chance of putting up a fight. They went from birds of prey to scavengers that are barely getting by, and Talos saw something greater for them all. To quote from the omnibus to end this video off, and I honestly think this is the part that broke me. What awaits us in the maelstrom? What is the Hell's Iris? Talos shook his head. You will see with your own eyes if the ship manages to hold together for long enough to actually reach the dock. So it is a dock. It is... Octavia, I am a warrior, not a scribe or a literist. I lack the words to do it justice. Yes, the Hell's Iris is a dock. You say that like it's a curse. I'm a warrior. Octavia licked her dry lips before speaking. What did you want to do with your life? She asked. I told you the truth. I'd always dreamed of guiding such a warship, and for better or for worse, fate had gave me what I wished for. But what about you? Do you mind if I ask? Talos laughed again, that same whispering chuckle, and tapped the defiled Aquila emblazoned on his chest. I wanted to be a hero. A moment later, he masked his scarred face behind his skulled helm. Red eye lenses stared down at her, devoid of all emotion. And look at how that worked out. Thanks for listening.